We've discovered patterns.
The connection was always there.
This changes everything we thought we knew about human health.
Hello and welcome everyone to Health Revealed. My name is Cory Endrulat. I am here joined by Stephanie MoDavis, Scott Gordon, and Leslie Powers. This is our interview series where we will be sharing with you amazing guests and unique or untold perspectives to shift the paradigm of health in our world. From the micro to the macro, the individual to the collective. We want to provide you with practical action steps that you can take in your own life to better your own health. This is a fully independent project because we deeply care about our world and we aspire to connect to the mainstream and the alternative perspectives, bring them together, integrate the solutions. We welcome you to participate in this whole project with us, share your story, share your resources with us. Without further ado, I'll head it over to Stephanie.
All right. So Shadow Tech is a spiritual, philosophical, and psychological platform intended to be used by self-healers in their inner work practice and anyone who wishes to better understand the shadow side of the human condition. It was created by two rock musicians who dedicated their lives to deep art and inner transformation. Between the years 2012 and 2025, 2 books of theory and practice were published, perhaps 50 songs written, and an alchemical progressive rock band called the O1 Experience. This was created by Melissa Murray and Colin Davis. Melissa Murray sadly left our planet on January 5th, 2025, leaving her creative estate and sole mission to be carried forth by her partner and husband, Colin Davis, who continues to develop and teach their way of inner alchemy. Scott, over to you.
I've really been enjoying your book.
Great. Nice. Yeah.
Called Transforming Darkness, and appreciate the advanced copy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And as an inner work counselor myself, I'm working on one aspect of the shadow, and the book helped educate me as to other aspects of the shadow that go out into the world, into the group, and how we project our shadow out there. And
Right.
a lot of times we wind up coming to our inner work through finding something wrong with the world and then finally realizing that we may be part of that. We may be connected to that on a more deeper level than we think. So I had found a little quadrant here in your book, and I think we have a better copy of it we're going to show in a minute. But it's basically about the macro to the micro, the outer society, and to the individual itself.
Right.
And so as our group is about healthcare and transforming the healthcare system in any way that we can, both from the macro and from the micro. I wanted to get you to describe your work and how we might get some insights into. Most of the listeners will be aware that we have a healthcare problem, or we can call it a crisis, but it's been a crisis for decades. So we have a lot of problems in our healthcare system. We have a healthcare culture that some would consider toxic, and there's a lot of dimensions to that, and it varies. You know, there's a hospital over here that works very functional and very nice and very friendly and very local and very community, and then there's a hospital we're scared to go to because we heard they're doing this or that, and there's all shades of gray in between. And so we want to talk about how our collective shadow and individual shadows connect into this monstrosity or this monstrous healthcare system that has good and bad elements and that we depend on culturally and socially. We depend on as a key major part of our economy, major part of our lives, you know, insurance, everything. It all points to healthcare. It's how we take care of our bodies. And not all of us depend on, you know, hospitals and healthcare to do it, but the majority do, and it's a huge feature in our system. So I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate more on your work and help us understand some of these other connections?
Well, right. That's a lot there. So the healthcare system is a collective projection of our own needs and our own mindset. And so we get what we are. And so we're not going to be able to fix the healthcare system unless we start to address our own inner states, which is where, I mean, there is such thing as biological disease, and people have accidents, and there is a physical component to disease, and that you're always going to have a healthcare system. You're always going to have doctors to address that. But I'd say a huge part of our problems as a society now, all of the syndromes and psychological disease that we experience now, is on account of us neglecting our own inner states. And so we basically live a very fast-paced, materialistic, and exoteric lifestyle, and we pay very little attention to our own psycho-spiritual inner condition. And so, we used to have, we have the Judeo-Christian heritage, and so within that there is a certain a paradigm for approaching psycho-spiritual health. But I think that way of doing it is not obsolete, but it's definitely kind of hitting the wall in what it can do. And so. So basically, we have to we're kind of in a period right now where the old paradigm is showing all these cracks and starting to collapse, and no one's going to come along and just say, okay, here's the new paradigm for you, because we collectively have to create the new paradigm. And so what that's going to be is that's going to be individuals and groups and movements who are all doing different experiments and trying different things, and taking their own health care taking responsibility for it themselves. And we need to go into an evolutionary phase of experimentation. And then that eventually all of these different ways of doing things will coalesce and ideas will work their way through. But right now, we just have to, I'd say the best thing to do is to kind of just unplug from the matrix or from the system, so to speak, and start, developing new ways of living, new ways of thinking, new ways of being, new lifestyles that are much healthier and more balanced. And I don't think that you can actually live the modern, American, career-oriented lifestyle and follow all of the matrix narratives and then also be healthy physically and psychospiritually. So people have to get creative, and they have to start, unplugging from that slowly but surely, and creatively putting together a lifestyle, a way of life, and a way of thinking about their own health from a psycho-spiritual perspective, and then that will lead to where it leads to, and evolution will occur. But in terms of my work with Melissa, this is something that is, first of all, this was an organic thing, and we both were kind of always, we were both self-healers, wounded healers, you could say. And we were both, had a spiritual orientation, and we're both children of the '60s. And Melissa was into Eastern spiritual practices, into Yogananda and Sri Aurobindo and stuff like that. And I was sort of probably 23 years ago or something like that, I found Jungian psychology, and so I was going in that direction. I also kind of experimented with Eastern things. And so that was kind of the background. And then we both had our own, multiple, I'd say, dark nights of the soul, different challenges in life where we had to call on our psychospiritual gnosis to get us through those situations. And then we were also, just not coincidentally, we were both red-pilled people, right? Melissa was actually quote-unquote red-pilled before I was. I think I kind of woke up to a lot of these scams in about 2005 or something, but Melissa already kind of had been there already for years. And so we were also curious about the nature of evil in the collective, and what's behind all these what's behind these scams, these conspiracies, all of this kind of that's what we call it. I guess you're looking for a word to describe what we're talking about here with the whole red pill thing, but you know what I'm talking about. And so when we got together in like late 2012, early 2013, we just had these interests that aligned. And we're also both musicians and all that. And we just basically started, going through, we basically, what we wanted to do, this is what it was, is that what we wanted to do, I was 43, Melissa was 50. And we both realized when we came together that we both had enough time into psychoanalyzing ourselves. We both had enough experience, going through different crises in life and pulling ourselves out of it. And we knew that we still were plagued by our own pathologies, our own neuroses, our own weaknesses and insecurities. And we recognized that with each other, together with each other, we had the opportunity to together as a couple, to be able to help each other work through our garbage, you could say. Or shadow material. And so that kind of just put us on this trajectory. And then what came out of it, it was just a creative, you could say it was very spiritual actually. What happened is that we basically, it's like lightning struck, basically. And in fact, there's a story I could tell you about how that when we first got together, Melissa actually, I touched her shoulder, like the second time we went for a walk, and like a bolt of electricity went down through her head and out through her feet. And she had a lot of those kinds of experiences. So there was something very metaphysical about our coming together, and we recognized that. And so that really charged us with intention. And we're like, okay, we're supposed to do something here. There's something important that's supposed to come out of this. And so we just really took it seriously. And, we went into the Jungian psychology. We went into all kinds of different spiritual traditions that we had already dabbled with, but we went into them very seriously. And what we kind of came up with was that what we're talking about when you're talking about inner healing, to a great degree, you're talking about what Carl Jung called the shadow. What you're talking about is going into your psyche and pulling into consciousness those things that your ego is repressing down into the unconscious because they're too toxic or too antithetical to your thinking, to your way of being. They're too scary. You wouldn't want to show those things to other people, and so they get shoved down. So in the closet or swept under the rug. And then eventually we realized that this is the inner correlate to what we call evil in the world. And this was kind of like one of the main kind of downloads that came out of our work together, was to realize that the shadow, the place where we shove down all of our darkness, is a source of disease, of mental illness, of all the kinds of physical things that people suffer from, that they have to go to the healthcare system for. But it is also the sort of storehouse of energy that we project out into the world that manifests as all of the behavior and all of the systems that we call evil. And so this is just, so it's really like the invisible elephant in the living room, really, is that, so we're holding on to all of this inner darkness, each and every one of us is. And because we don't put any attention on it because we don't have any practice or methods for pulling it up and integrating it, it sneaks out of our psyches through projection, through displacement, through all kinds of leakage, and then that combines collectively to give us the amount of evil that we have in the world. Evil is the byproduct of the repressed shadow of the psyche. And like once you get that, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff to our work, but that is kind of that's a big chunk of it. Once you get that, you realize, okay, so I can't have inner balance, I can't have relational balance, I can't have community balance or societal balance unless I work with my own shadow, and I have to stop blaming the whole world for causing evil in this group or this political ideology or that one or whatever it is, when I myself have my own evil that I'm dumping out into the world in all kinds of ways. I would be a hypocrite to tell the rest of the world to get it together when I'm not getting it together. So that's kind of the big thing, the big realization. Now, the problem with that, I'm just going to say, before you can stop me, the two big problems with this are that we are addicted to the process of dumping our own shadows into the world. This is our, and I can explain exactly how that works and how we do it and everything, but we're addicted to doing that. And if we stop doing that, if we stop blaming and projecting and displacing through aggression and all kinds of other ways that we displace, if we stop doing that, then we're now stuck with this big toxic ball of junk. And then we don't really have, like I said earlier, models, methods, practices, or whatever to deal with it. And we go to the wisdom holders of our society and they don't have answers either. So intuitively, we know that better not go into that because that's a monster down there that's going to, open up Pandora's box or whatever. And then the other problem is that this is a fundamental problem that is the way that the human psyche is built, and that is that we have the issue where the human being, the current day modern human being with the prefrontal cortex, and our ability to cognize the way we do and project and to think and all of this high level stuff and create organized societies, technological societies, we can do that, and primates can't do that. But we are built on the primate infrastructure, right? And then the primates are built on infrastructure below that, down to reptilian, down to fish, down to one-celled amoeba. We are all this biological stack technology, all incorporated into one big ecosystem that we call the human being. And if you look at the way nature is, the way primates and other animals operate, they operate in a way that's way more brutal, way more uncivilized than human beings. And we have created this layer of civilized, organized mind that psychologists call the ego, the conscious ego. And that's like an island sitting on an ocean, right? And so that's a little layer. And we've created this whole organized and moral society out of this conscious ego, but below it you have all this primal energy, all of this, aggression and sexuality and control drives and all these, deep, powerful animalistic drives. Plus, we have all the leftovers of our own personal intergenerational trauma and our own personal childhoods and all of that. We have all this stuff there. And let me say it like this, organized society is the byproduct of shadow repression. That's how we got this world, is through repressing our shadows and then creatively channeling them out by going, oh, the Native Americans kill them, or the Russians kill them, or whatever it is, or rape and kill those people, rape, kill, and control those people. And then that leaves our little situation nice. And we've found a way to kind of channel this primal stuff out into a certain direction so that we can get rid of it and then leave our organized society alone. And then every society's doing that to each other, going to war with each other and all that. They're using these behaviors to dump their own junk to keep their own boat floating, right? And that's how we've maintained civilization. And we don't know yet. We haven't biologically evolved to the level yet where we can be like, okay, my primal aggression, my primal control drives, my primal sexuality, whatever it is, there it is. Okay, let me sit with it, let me meditate, and let me process it. We don't have that ability. That's a nice dream to say that we maybe could do that in meditation or whatever. We don't have that ability. Or let me go, I have aggression. Let me just go grab an axe and just start chopping wood. And then that will fully integrate it. It doesn't. So we're stuck. We're at a level of our evolution as a species where we're just now found out. I mean, this is Carl Jung's discovery. This is like less than 100 years old. We've just now found out about this shadow storehouse of primal energy that's within us, and that it is causing all of the evil in the world. Not all, but a great deal of it. And we don't yet know what to do with it. So we're in an experimental phase, and 99.9% of the population doesn't even know that this is going on. So this is where there's a fraction of us, people like us who are listening to this or are on this program, we have the opportunity to be pioneers in this area. We already have, the real pioneers were the Jungians and the other whatever they were, practicing Gestalt therapy and all of the different kinds of therapies that came out of the 70s. They were the first wave of people that came into contact with this energy and said, okay, let's try to figure out things to do with this. And now we're in the next wave of that, and it hasn't even really picked up yet, but that's really where we need to go. And so this is basically something, it's kind of like when Einstein invented the theory of relativity. Everybody used it. They're like, wow, this is great. And we created all of this advanced technology from that. Well, Jung discovered the shadow and discovered where it comes from and how it works and all of that, and how it is the equal opposite of the ego and the persona, and then put that out to people, and everyone said, no thanks, we can't handle that. Put it back on the shelf. So now here we are, we're pulling it back off the shelf, and we're going, okay, let's look at this, let's deal with this, let's start working on practices. And that's what Melissa and I were doing, and that's what I'm still doing. And so that's kind of there's like a little spiel for you.
Wow.
Fascinating, interesting. And from what you described and from what I've read of your work, there's an interaction, two very important interactions that we should understand in the context of healthcare between the individual and the group or the society. Mm-hmm. And that is the idea, and this is something that I've run into in my own work in doing the inner work, that doing inner work increases health, and importing shadow material without processing it is detrimental to health. It's
importing?
Taking in experiences, traumas, etc., that don't get processed and that get shunted into the shadow. Yeah. And that shadow fills up, and then we become actually unhealthy in more ways, maybe mentally, maybe physically, maybe both.
Yeah, we have to displace it through projection displacement, or we have to suppress or repress. It's kind of like two levels. Suppression is like you have junk back there, but you're holding it down. And then repression is where you don't even know you have that junk. It's so far down there. And then so it leaks out. And so you're like, all kinds of shady things that we do, shady things in life. And these are ways in which our shadow junk gets leaked out into the world. So just think about how shady the healthcare system is from the top level all the way, from the fact that it's publicly traded corporations for profit and all of that, and the CEOs and the advertising and just every level of shadiness and keeping the patient in the dark and blah, blah, blah. It's just shady, 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 shady. So if people had a different ethic, if they had an ethic of transparency and bringing the shadow into light, you couldn't even have a healthcare system like we have right now. It wouldn't even be able to operate.
And exactly. And the inner work is where you build that transparency. You start becoming honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And you radiate out into your relationships, your family, more and more honesty until there is transparency. It's not easy to attain. It's a lot of work.
Lifelong process. It's a process of continual development of self-awareness, right? This is just basically a ladder of self-awareness. You're becoming more and more self-aware of all the little ways in which you are being shady or you are projecting. And then as you become aware of something that you did that was primal or that was unconscious, then you take responsibility for it and you go, okay, that's a part of me. That's something I'm doing. All right, where does that come from? You dissect it, you trace it down to its roots. You talk to other people about it, whoever you have in your life that you can talk to about it, you journal it out. It's all kinds of ways that we can integrate shadow material. You bring that aspect of yourself that you had been in denial over, you bring it into consciousness, and you don't just say, oh, well, that's just the way I am, whatever, it's the way my mom and dad were, and let it go. You say, no, this is my job now. This is my ethical, moral mandate, is to work on this material as I slowly but surely, you can consciously go looking for it, shadow work. You can consciously go looking for this stuff, or you can just be totally self-aware all the time as much as you can. And then when it pops up, you go, okay, there's something, I'm going to work with that. And it just becomes part of your lifestyle.
Yeah. And you introduced me to that idea because I was into doing therapy sessions.
Yeah.
And you did therapy sessions about what went on outside the therapy room.
Right.
And I finally got, I had an understanding of mindfulness, but you described what I would describe as a continuous mindfulness. In other words, where you are prepared to confront your reactions and your emotions as they happen. Not just in a session afterwards, but as they happen. And that I find that fascinating. And it sort of doubles the potential of your personal progress when you're engaged in both. When you can reflect on the past and you can also be in the present moment and be aware of your emotions and reactions. And just to kind of sum up what I was alluding to earlier with the two roles of the individual in this that are very key. You made a very good description of how people bring in their shadows to this system. And the system itself, it seems, attracts, angels and demons. When I think of healthcare, sometimes I think of the nurse that has dedicated her life to helping.
Yes.
Right? And then you have this stark contrast, and you see this on the Netflix documentaries because it's real world, real life, or you see it in the murder novels and things like that. The medical setting just seems to attract so much shadow material. It's got death, it's got poison, it's got power over others in a private room settings, things like that.
Good points. Good points.
Then
Absolutely.
it has the angelic component. It has rescue, help, saving people's lives, personal sacrifice. So we have just the widest range you can imagine here in the healthcare thing.
Very, very good perception there. Yeah, that's why you said angels and demons. Yeah, it really, it basically, right, it attracts the God complex in us, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right? Because then we can play God. You're either, as a doctor, you're going to live or die by my hand.
Yeah.
Yes, and also the victim authority polarity.
Oh, which is a parent-child relationship really extended into adulthood. That's going on big time. Oh my God, I saw that when Melissa was in the hospital, how much the doctors are doing the parent thing and the patients are doing the child thing.
And if you try to individuate as a patient in the process of having a healthcare provider, then you're non-compliant.
Oh yeah, right. Oh, they don't like it when you start thinking for yourself in there. Start directing your own healthcare.
Yeah, so it looks like we're talking about the individuals, and then we're starting to look at these collective systems and how they interact with each other. So how about we bring in these 4 quadrants and we show people how you kind of map these out. And maybe we can start off with the base model that you formulated it around.
Yep. Last thing I would just say on that last thing though is that healthcare system that we have that we're talking about there, the way all those things that Scott was talking about, those are a product of our own lack of self-responsibility, our own neediness, our own lack of self knowledge, and our own fears, and then so we kind of create. This is another metaphysical recognition. Melissa and I talked about what we call the archetype of the virus. It's like entropy in physics, right? Wherever a system is weak, entropy will come in there and take it out, right? Mm-hmm. Wherever nature has it worked out so that wherever any system, any biological organism or any system is weak, a challenger, an eternal opponent will show up in there and start challenging it, and it will use whatever means to do that. And so in the human world, it will use unconscious people to challenge you. And so you walk into the doctor and you're not making decisions for yourself and you're in a very scared and needy place. Well, then that's going to summon the demonic shadow side of the doctor, and that's going to come out. Now, different things are going to be summoned in the doctor. So hopefully you're getting a doctor where his parental archetype is coming online, and he's going, oh, I need to take care of this needy patient, this child. But sometimes it's a negative parental archetype, right? And so it comes in and it feels disdain, and it feels disrespect for that person who isn't taking responsibility for themselves. And so that will come in and affect the healthcare. And so we're kind of getting all of the darkness of the healthcare system is kind of the external projection of all of that we have in ourselves that we haven't taken an accounting of. So so there you go. Yeah.
Would you say that it's safe to say that in this time in history when there's so many movements towards exposing the ill health of the medical system and blaming the providers and blaming the system and blaming the hospitals and blaming this and that actually the locus of control actually resides in the patient to show up differently. So you see so many people attacking the system, but in all actuality, they are providing for that which we show up with.
Right. It goes back to your subjective experience or concept, basically. Right. This is the locus of healing. It's the individual. It's the patient. The patient is the one who heals themselves. Now, they may bring on some helpers, some technicians to help them, but they have to be, in the best possible world, they have to be, to the greatest degree possible, directing their own healthcare, making their own decisions. And because we don't make those decisions for ourselves, and because we don't educate ourselves, and we stay at this child level of dealing with it, then we get all of this equal opposite stuff that shows up in the system. Yeah.
Very interesting.
But the four quadrant thing, right?
Let's look into the quadrants here.
So let me just, because we've talked around the thing, let me, and I said, I already kind of defined the shadow already, but I just want to be very clear about it. The shadow is, you have a conscious ego, your conscious mind, and the shadow is everything that your conscious mind can't tolerate. And usually what's on the list of that is the stuff that we all have. This is the archetypal stuff, like we all have control drives, we all have sexuality, we all have aggression. Those we all have fear. Those are things that all people have, and you can't just let them just bubble up and leak out constantly out into the world. And so we hold those things back. Then you have all kinds of leftovers of trauma. You have grief. You have stuff that may come from, being tortured by your family, or by a religious system that's giving you a guilt complex, or you might have envy and jealousy that comes out of still leftover neediness, or infantile grandiosity because your parents didn't really see your greatness, and so now you're compensating for that. So this is all stuff that's in the shadow, and then like we said, it gets projected out into the world. Projection, I should just be clear about this too before we go into this. Projection is where you see in another person something that is in your own shadow. But because the conscious mind hasn't processed it yet, you haven't really sat with it and said, oh, you know what? That's me too. You're looking at Donald Trump because or somebody like that, and you're like, God, he's so arrogant, or he's so aggressive, or he's so immature, or whatever you claim that he is. You're not recognizing that the reason why he triggers you so much, because there's a lot of people like that. The reason why he triggers you so much is because those elements you also have in your own shadow. And so what's happening is there is a sort of mechanical operation going on where the psyche is saying, put it on him, put it on him. I can't handle that, so put it on him. And then once you recognize that whatever triggers you is a sign that is related to something inside of yourself, then you can go at it pretty, psychotherapeutically. You can be like, okay, take out a piece of paper and be like, let me write down all the things I hate about Donald Trump or Barack Obama, or whoever it is you're projecting onto. And then you can write all those things down, and then you can be like, okay, well, where is that in me? When was I like that? How often am I like that? And you really do take an accounting of yourself. And then as you start to recognize that the things you hate about that other person are elements of yourself, then you'll notice that the charge lowers, and then Donald Trump can come and go and it won't really bother you. And so that's like just a simple basic shadow work practice there. So that's what we're talking about here. That's the energy that we're talking about here. And then there's a lot more detail that we'll probably won't go into today, but I just wanted to make sure everybody has that basic understanding of what the shadow is. Now, the 4 quadrants thing comes out of integral theory, and that comes from Ken Wilber, an American philosopher. And what Ken did a lot of brilliant things, but one of the brilliant things that he did was that he recognized that pretty much every subject that scholars write about or that people think about can be perceived from one of 4 different directions, 4 different perspectives. And so some people will be like, for example, if you're just we'll use this chart that's on the screen right now. You have the upper left-hand quadrant is the first person perspective. The lower left-hand quadrant is the second person perspective. The upper right-hand quadrant is the third person perspective, and the lower right-hand is the third person plural perspective. That's kind of what that is. But to kind of get into it a little more, for example, if we use the human being as the subject that we're going to dissect with this model, just imagine you take a subject and then you overlay the 4 quadrant model onto it, and that dissects it into 4 perspectives. And so that gives you a holistic view of whatever it is. So we can take the human being and we can go, okay, what's the first person perspective of the human being? That's your internal state. That's your internal subjective, like Stephanie's subjective experiencer. That is your personal mind, your personal perception. That's the upper left-hand quadrant. And so a lot of what the human being is doing is dealing with their own internal world, their own personal perspective. That's the upper left-hand quadrant. The lower left-hand quadrant is what we call culture. It's the shared mind between us all. This is where you have ideologies and all the stuff that we call culture. This is where your religion is, your laws, all of your media, your philosophies, all of that we call culture. That's where we're sharing mental material amongst each other through language, through art, through images. And so that's like the collective mind. That's the lower left-hand quadrant. And you can, that's a part of humanity too. Then you have the upper right-hand quadrant. That's the objective third-person perspective, which is basically the human body. That's like, okay, we are a body. We are people walking around, doing things, behaving, acting. And you can look at us kind of like as automatons, as just biological entities walking around. That's where the medical system looks at us from. They take it from the third-person perspective, and they go, okay, this is a biological entity. It's like a machine. It's got parts, and they're either working or they're not working. That's that perspective. And then the lower right-hand quadrant is the societal perspective, where human beings get together and they make all kinds of systems of organization, school systems and government and healthcare systems and economics and all that kind of stuff. That is sort of our collective external perspective, or third person plural. And that is a holistic way of looking at any subject. So the healthcare system, if the healthcare system was doing what it's supposed to be doing in a holistic way, and you went to the doctor, they would say, okay, we need to look at all four quadrants. Okay, so what's going on with your personal health? What are you doing with your body? Are you exercising? What are you eating? What's your lifestyle like? Your actual physical behavior? And they would look at all that. That's upper right-hand quadrant. Then they would say, okay, well, what's going on in your subjective inner state? What's going on there? That's that's the psychological component. And they would look at that. Then they would say, well, what's the culture that you're embedded in? What are you reading? What are your belief systems? What are your values as an individual? And how might your values not be, coherent with your lifestyle or with your environment? And then you'd look at your lower right-hand quadrant and you'd say, well, how are you actually living? Where do you live? Do you live in an apartment? Do you live near nature? Do you have a backyard? Are there toxins in the environment? Let's look at what's your workplace like? You'd look at that part too. And then you'd put them all together, and then you could diagnose the patient in a holistic way. That would be a massive, massive step forward. But of course, if you did that, you'd be moving into the direction of actually solving problems, actually getting people healthy, and then all your parasitic activity that you're doing would fall away. And so that's why this hasn't been used, is because it would shrink the healthcare system down from a $1 trillion thing down to a $50 billion thing. And all these people they wouldn't be able to parasite on us. And so a lot of solutions like this are just left on the shelf. This one is not as much as the basic problem is the shadow is that it just scares the living hell out of people just because there's so much junk in there and they don't know what to do with it. That's an understandable reason why that's not being addressed. But this, for example, this is something that academia even knows about, but they're not using because it just goes against the way the parasitic system is. And so, but that doesn't mean we can't use it. And so there it is. That's how you would dissect the human being. Now, I'm going to stop and so you can maybe ask questions, but then we can show one of the other slides and I can show you where what I did was I took the subject of the shadow, the theory of the shadow, and I put that into the four quadrants and I said, what are the four quadrants of the shadow? Okay, there it is. So what we've been talking about, what Carl Jung was talking about, the shadow of the mind, the shadow of the psyche, that's the upper left-hand quadrant. what we call cultural evil, all the different ideologies, Marxism and communism and fascism and Nazism and all those kinds of parasitic isms, that's all cultural evil. Then you have disease in the body, and then you have what I call the matrix of civilization, or what people just call, I think on another slide I called it the collective deep state. And actually you go to the other slide, Corey, or whoever's running that, and then there's kind of a list here of everything that belongs in this system. So let me just go through this. I know I'm talking fast and it's a lot of information, but I am trying to get it in within an hour. So if you go to the upper left-hand quadrant, the personal shadow, I've kind of segregated these aspects of the shadow into different paragraphs that deal with different value systems or different ways of different perspectives. So in an ancient perspective, medieval perspective, say, the personal shadow would be something, it would be demonology, demons, demonic possession. That would be kind of what we're talking about there. And then it would also be what we call, in today's world, we call psychopathology and personality disorders. This is in the domain of the shadow. Carl Jung's understanding, his understanding of autonomous complexes or shadow archetypes, Robert Moore, that's all in there. I also have in the bottom there, it says the pain body. That's Eckhart Tolle's understanding. We have Jung's understanding, and then Wetiko from Paul Levy. These all belong in the personal shadow. What else do I have there? Neuroses, compulsions, depression, anxiety. All that stuff is the personal shadow. The lower left-hand quadrant is the cultural part. And like Scott, notice I put a little red pill on that one and the other one on the bottom, because this is what the red pill people are looking at. They're looking at cultural evil and the collective deep state. So cultural evil is all of these like I have a lot of things listed on there, but like what I was just talking about, all the secular isms, all the different isms, the wokeism, the capitalism, the even racism, and all these different things. Anything that's a cultural or ideological virus, that's the collective shadow. That's the cultural shadow. The upper right-hand quadrant is, like we've said, it's disease of all kinds, chronic disease, syndromes, and psychosomatic symptoms of all kinds, and all kinds of, I got in there dysfunctional relationships and substance abuse and criminal behavior, everything that has to do with behavior and the body. That's the upper right-hand quadrant. And then the lower right-hand quadrant is, like I have it listed in different categories, gangs, mafia, tribal warfare, monopolies, globalization, corporatocracy, new world order, technocracy, secret societies, blah, 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 military industrial complex, government pharma complex, all parasitic complexes. That's the collective deep state. So the red pill people are looking at the cultural isms and the collective deep state. And they're starting to recognize, they don't recognize the connection really, but they're looking at health and they're going, hey, we're not healthy. We need to take supplements. We need to go on a diet. So they're waking up to that, but they haven't woken up to the upper left-hand quadrant, the psycho-spiritual level. And they're all one system. And this is like the biggest key of this whole thing. They're not separate. They're all one system. This is all one. This is the archetype of the shadow. And this is just how it presents itself in all these different areas of the human being. And they're all together. You have to work on all of them. You can't work on one of those and think that you're going to get progress without working on them all. You have to work on them all. And what Wilber's 4 quadrants does is it shows them all to you on one screen. And you're like, okay, they're all connected. I see what they all are. And once you get used to using this model, you can just apply this onto anything that you're studying, so that you won't pigeonhole yourself into one quadrant, which is what most people do.
Wow. This is powerful information, and I want to say, like, Stephanie, what would you say to someone who's like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start. I see like Satan, Lucifer,
Right.
psycho-spiritual, religion. Maybe they're a Christian, maybe they're an atheist, and they're looking at this for the first time. What would you have to say?
Well, it can be very overwhelming, but I think due to my prior experience, not too far off of that of Melissa, is I started at a young age with Eastern practices, and they're very focused on going within and turning within. So when I work with people, or one of the most simple ways I think that we can approach this, if somebody's watching, is to say, do you feel good or do you feel bad on a daily basis? Really honestly, ask yourself that question. How do you feel? How do you feel throughout the day? I mean, just very simply, it's just a simple gauge for you to be aware that maybe something's wrong. Because I just think we're at that point in history where we have so much distraction that for many people, it takes a lot to notice that there's something wrong, or the polar opposite of that is I'm a hypochondriac and everything is wrong because I don't know what actually is wrong. So when I work with people on a very simple basis, I just say, how are you feeling? Do you feel bad? Or how are your relationships? Bad? Good. Just kind of get a classic gauge of what the story is they're telling themselves, and then help them to start to delayer on a greater level.
Right, because Stephanie, when you're interfacing with your clients, you're people who develop, chronic illness and stuff. A lot of times they are really in a rat race kind of a lifestyle, right? And so this is where, I think to myself, you gave that suggestion of ask yourself, how am I feeling? Just think how toxic and tragic that is, that an individual would just be running around in the hamster wheel so much that they don't even take time to ask themselves how they're feeling. How am I doing? They're so trapped up in, I got to get this done, or my career, or this, that, or the other, or what my boss wants, or blah, blah, blah. And they're just so trapped in my traffic and all this kind of stuff that they're not even, I think this is what's happening. This is a big part of what's happening. It's just, so we're self-abandoners.
Mm-hmm. And Colin, just like Melissa often said, it's all about self-realization. I think that there's a pull for the soul towards a specific purpose in this lifetime. Yeah. And I've decided that, as you were saying, it also has that equal opposite. If a soul is stagnant and on the wrong path, it can kind of shut down and cultivate an illness to try to create a sense of overcoming an illness. So now I'm reinvigorated and empowered because I've been able to conquer my illness. And now I'm the hero of my story again. So you really have to break it into these categories of, is it a hypo or a hyper type of state that's cultivating this experience to help put you on the right path?
Absolutely. I remember it came to mind when you're saying that something Robert Moore was talking about. A lot of the Jungians talk about how we don't have the old initiations that we used to have that take you through different stages of life. Right. And so he said, this is so amazing, that if you can't be initiated, and you have to, so the things that initiate you are either social initiations, like, get married or have a child, get a degree, join the military, those kinds of initiations, or they are initiations of the consequences of life, right? Like your medical problems and stuff like that, the dark night of the soul. And if you go through these experiences without the psyche, an initiation means to initiate means to start. It's a restart. And so if your society will not initiate you, and you are not aware of how the bad things that happen to you in life are all potential initiations, and you're not aware of that and are not pursuing that, the body will do what it can to initiate you. The body will seek initiations. And so it will give you a disease. It will give you a divorce. It will give you, the psyche, the body, one thing. It will give you these conditions to try to initiate you, to jumpstart you to the next level. and then our society doesn't even recognize that that's what's going on. You go to the doctor and you have this severe problem, you haven't, whatever it is, and they're like, duh, I don't know, let me give you a scan and see what we see. And so that.
And that was
yeah.
probably one of my biggest messages. And I saw clearly what you were saying of how adverse the psyche and the system is to true awakening. When I simply came in with the narrative, can we ask ourselves why our illness might be happening to us like maybe it's happening for us actually.
Yeah.
And that goes completely
Right.
the opposite of that warlike mentality of you have something wrong with you and we're going to fix you and then you're going to be good. You completely miss the initiation, that potential psychic and spiritual initiation.
Completely miss it. And so people go through these illnesses, and what ends up happening, actually, this is another thing about, like, to add to what Scott was saying about the different psychological functions that the healthcare system is serving for us, is that that when you go in, you get sick, the doctor takes you in, you have to suffer through the medical procedure, and then you heal and you are let out of the hospital. That was your psyche seeking an initiation.
This happens.
Wow.
I've heard this in emergency room settings over and over again, that they have these constant repeat ER victims that just constantly go into the ER because they think something's wrong. They go through the suffering of all the blood work and testing, and then everything's fine. And it's that dopamine, serotonin kind of upregulation of like, okay, I'm starting over. Everything's good.
Yes. And you have a complex now that gets addicted. Like we always talk about Melissa's complex called Sick Girl. Sick Girl needs to have her fill. And she's never fully initiated. She just turns like that. So the ego has to put the connect together. There has to be a connect that says, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing here. I'm keeping myself in a lowered state of consciousness by keep turning this whole thing. And what I could do is I could use it to bootstrap myself to a more adult way of being in the world. But that scares me. So I need to work through all the fear and self-doubt that's keeping me in this lowered state so that the initiation doesn't take. So the doctor should say, okay, what's going on in your life? Then the doctor should notice that, okay, there's a part of this person, they keep coming back to the emergency room, that's not, the initiation isn't taking. They're not using it to leverage themselves, out of here and go to the next level in life. They're stuck. There's a complex that's holding them down. The doctor should, with the way medicine is now, refer them to the psychiatrist, the psychologist, who would help them work through that complex and all the fears and self-doubt and all the junk, shadow junk that's behind all that. But it's like, so you're just going to the hospital and everybody's a sleepwalker. The patients are sleepwalkers, the doctors are, the nurses are, like someone said, just absolutely, they're doing the real work. They're the real heroes. They're the ones that really know what's going on. And but the doctors are just aloof. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. There's so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to unpacking more and having you on and
Sure.
getting into
Yeah, that was a good dose. Yeah, there you go.
Specific functions and more specific areas.
Yeah.
But and you've probably already done a lot of this, but we kind of wanted to end on solutions, particularly for individuals in navigating that scary medical complex system from the viewpoint of individuals, as well as maybe a little bit about how the individual can enhance their health by paying a little more attention to their body, to their health, particularly the shadow parts, the shadow work that we can do. And your books are perfect for that. I really encourage people to get his first Shadow Tech book, and then of course I have the
The new one has,
dark,
that
it's a
one
little
there
more
has a
advanced,
bunch of
right?
shadow. Well, I actually don't
Yeah.
think it is in a way.
Or a little
It's-
more, yeah.
Maybe see this one here was kind of like it was kind of like a big download, and it's kind of like, hey everyone, here's 6 or 8 pieces that all kind of fit together. Figure out how they go together. And this one is more like I put them together for you and simplified them and kind of congealed it, left some things out, and then given you kind of a solutions chapter, well, actually there's a couple here. If you look at the shadow work practices chapter, I give you shadow work practices across all 4 quadrants. So, and each of those is a challenge. Then I have this thing called A Declaration of Psychosocial Health. This is like my own ethical treatise, my own ethical manifesto. And you can read it and see kind of how serious I am about the whole thing and kind of think about your own ethical manifesto. But with the healthcare thing, it's that I think you kind of have to strike a balance with this. Melissa and I our mindset for the whole time was everything that happens to me physically is coming from my own psyche. And I am the primary doctor of my own psyche. No one can be a better doctor of my own psyche than me, because no one is 24/7 interacting with my psyche. No one knows me on the inside as well as I do. And then we were figuring that everything physical that happens to you has a psychological root. And so you work on your psychology. Then, of course, you work on your body and you keep that clean as much as you can. And then that should basically take care of everything. What we found out, though, is that we're all carrying intergenerational trauma codes, intergenerational codes, or what the Jungians would say, shadow archetypes that are running through us that are kind of giving us the sort of dark parts of the drama of our lives. Because every great story has to have it has the upswings and the downswings. And so those are actually archetypal patternings that come through us, through our personality type and our particular makeup. And so that you can't fix everything with your own personal, shadow work or your own personal diet, because you can't actually even see everything that's happening. You're in your own bubble, and then there's things that are coming with you that there's nothing you can really do about. Some people come with genetic diseases that are just, they have, Lou Gehrig's disease or whatever, and they're just frozen in the chair. And no matter what they do in terms of psychological health, because they're working on themselves when they're stuck to the chair and they can't move, a lot of these people are working on themselves as deeply as they can, and they still can't get out of the chair. And so there is a part of this where you have to kind of divide it up. You have to say, a great deal of my health is dependent on my own responsibility for my own inner state and my own body. That's probably the primary chunk of it. You take responsibility for your own inner state and your own bodily health. You do that. And then anything else that comes to you that's dark, that's disease or however you want to put it, that's dark, that is showing you something that you couldn't previously see, and you use it as a doorway into more inner work, into more self-knowledge, and you do absolutely the best you can with that. And if you have to recruit outside people who can see things or know things that you don't know or can see, a doctor, a technician of some kind, okay, great, but you're still the master of that operation. You're running that whole thing. And you have to understand what that technician, what that doctor is doing. You have to align with what they're doing, and you have to take responsibility for that. And if you don't like what they're offering you, well, then you have to say, okay, well, they're offering me chemotherapy and that doesn't jive with me, so I'm going to turn it down. And if it kills me, I'm going to be okay with that. So it's a lot of responsibility when you work on things this way. So it's kind of a holistic thing, like the 4 quadrants. You're doing everything you can from the psychospiritual level. You're doing everything you can from the personal bodily healing level. And then you're interfacing with the society in the most awake way that you can. And you're taking responsibility for how far you go into the system or not. And then you're just accepting your fate. You're accepting what happens as the outcome of that. I did my absolute best. I'm doing my absolute best. And whatever God ends up giving me, that's what it's going to be. And then, so this is where now you're faced with death. And this is the big one that's, that the big fear of death is in the shadow. And so that you're going to have to face too. And so that's a big part of the whole healthcare, situation that we have here. We have so much fear of death, and so people are trying to be alleviated of that fear by somebody else, telling them it's going to be okay. But so to live this way is the most self-responsible, the most advanced way that human beings can live. This is going into the Himalayas and meditating. That is not the most advanced way that a human can live, because you're cutting yourself off from all these potential challenges that could evolve you, and you're cutting yourself off from being able to help others too. So the most advanced way to live is what we're talking about here, being absolutely responsible for your own psyche, doing psychological work on yourself all the time, being responsible for your physical health, directing your own healthcare, directing your own lifestyle, creatively creating a lifestyle that works for you, for who you are, for your personality type, for what your temperament is and what your drives are, making a lifestyle for yourself. This is the most advanced and self-responsible way of being a human that you can do. And we're just, people like me and Melissa, we're just coming at it as best we can. We're not making excuses, but we're recognizing that there's only so much that this is human evolution. This is it's going to take thousands of years for human beings probably, or maybe we'll have some big catastrophes and then we'll grow up even faster. Maybe it'll just take hundreds of years, but it's going to take a long time for humans to get to the next step of maturity. And so as individuals, we can do that at the individual level. And that's kind of what I'm selling, become part of the most advanced cutting edge human beings on the planet. And then that's our contribution to the future of humanity.
Yeah, what a
Beautiful,
wonderful,
Colin.
yeah, great.
Yeah,
What a
beautiful.
wonderful application of philosophy to the human condition, and especially as we're talking about in healthcare.
That's truly what I was just describing, is truly a paradigm shift, and each of those things we talked about is all, all those things are difficult, but it just becomes part of your lifestyle. And I know we have to go, but there's a book by Eric Neumann, Neumann, and it's called Depth Psychology and a New Ethic. And I know it's a difficult book. It's written in 40s language and high level kind of PhD type book. But this is an important Jungian, one of the original Jungians, and he basically describes these kind of two modes of being. Like after World War II, they were in Switzerland. He was a Jew living in Switzerland, and he had to go to Tel Aviv to stay protected. But that book right there, what they saw, the horrors and all the collective shadow projection of World War II. And they had this understanding of the shadow and of this ethic of living self-responsibly, like I just described. And he said basically the old ethic is the one where we ignore our shadows, we repress them, and then we project them onto the world and they leak out into all kinds of ways of evil. And then the new ethic is the self-responsible lifestyle, like I just described, where we basically integrate our shadows, we become aware of how we're projecting, we work on that, and we make a lifestyle for ourselves out of integrating our shadow material. That's the new ethic. Well, he put that out in like 1948 or something like that, and went on the shelf. No one looked at it, And so, yes, some Jungians talk about it or whatever, but the majority of the society was too immature for it, and they were getting such a rush out of the projecting, and the Nazis are bad, the communists are bad, the fascists are bad, blah, blah, blah. We got to go to war with them, and all this. We're just getting such a rush out of that game that we just couldn't put the game down, because this is basically describing how to get out of the duality game. You're never really getting out of it because of the way we're constructed and stuff, and the brain and all that stuff, but to definitely get way above the level we're at now with the duality game. And so basically he's like saying, stop playing the game. And people are like, I don't know how to stop playing the game. What do you mean? My politics, my career, my this, my that. And so that just went on the shelf.
Yeah, I think what you've said is brilliant. And I had some insights as I've been listening.
I want to hear your insights. Yeah.
The four quadrants and the idea of awareness and the challenges and limitations of our biology, of our triune brain.
Yeah.
And we're, as a psychotherapist and working with people with trauma, I've learned that the frontal lobes, the neocortex, this human brain that we have, does get cut off and separate from that animal and reptilian brain.
Right.
But there are ways that we can build a bridge to create awareness and to impact our mind and bring the shadow material forward and make conscious decisions, right?
Right.
And so the awareness that you've talked about is so important, the consciousness. And you mentioned something about, the sort of parasite class that is manipulating and our systems, right? That have this knowledge, but are basically hiding
they don't have this knowledge.
Well,
they don't.
I guess I would wonder.
They know that we're duality people and that they can play us like a tennis game.
I do.
They know that.
Yes, they know that they can. Yeah. However, they know that they can play us, and they know how to play us.
They do that.
They know how to use trauma.
Yes.
And to create cultural mechanisms to create disconnects and keep our shadow material occulted. So these four quadrants are also quadrants that can be manipulated. Right? They can manipulate our subjective, and they can manipulate even what's objective, telling us something's true that's not. They can help manipulate the cultural, entities, and there can be a lot of unconscious participation, right, with something that creates inner conflict, right, which the external, how we want to say, the conscious awareness of our mind, the ego, and our subconscious exists with a lot of contradiction.
Right.
And the splitting of parts, right?
That's
that
right.
are in
That's
conflict
That's
with
right.
each other.
Community of the psyche, yes.
Right. And that is often perpetuated through, the cultural and the collective experiences and norms and influences. And then we are left very confused and disconnected and non-integrated. So this awareness and the seeking of knowledge about self is so important, so that we can start to look at where we're out of where we're contradictory within ourselves. Looking at what are we denying, what are we avoiding, where do we have internal conflicts and contradictions? Right.
Because that's where you get taken advantage of, is where you have internal contradictions. That's where you can get played. So I would say that the psychopaths, the people who might take the four quadrants and say, okay, well, let's make sure that our parasitism is holistic. Let's hit them over here. Let's hit them over here. We're not doing enough on this level. So anyone that would do that or whatever, those people, the Jungians have the idea of the collective psyche, where it's all one mind, right? I mean, it even goes, you can just take it further back into all of nature, all of the cosmos, all is mind kind of thing. But at the human level, it's all one ecosystem. And these psychopaths that are doing this, they're basically the human viruses, right, that are basically proliferating on the fact that we don't have immunity to them, right? So this is one of the things to understand what Melissa always said. The virus gets you where you're weak. Just
Yes.
the archetype of the virus, and it's like an Agent Smith in the Matrix. Whoop, whoop, it'll pop up. Wherever you're weak, an Agent Smith will pop up to get you right there. And the greater collective psyche is okay with this, just like how Mother Nature is okay with viruses and bacteria and stuff that could kill you. She's like, okay, challenge every system, constantly put pressure on every system to make every system constantly on alert because if you think about the human being, all this stacked technology, like 4 billion years of stacked technology or biological technology, all working together perfectly. The only way we could have such integrity in the human body is if we had been challenged in every single possible way, and then the organism figured out, oh, okay, I'll stop that over like this, and I'll stop that like this. And so the virus has to try a higher level to get you, and then it has to try a higher level, and this is an ongoing thing. So these New World Order people, or all these psychopaths and stuff, these Davos people, or whoever we red pill people look at, these people are pretty easy for us to see and go, okay, that's a virus, that's a virus. Don't take their ideas. If you take their ideas, you're taking a mind virus into yourself and it's going to wreck you. So we just reject that. But the average person doesn't have immunity to it. So that's, in a way, I feel like the whole red pill awakening thing is an absolutely necessary level of cultural immunity that has to be built up so that we can see all these viral parasitic tricks that are being played on us. But ultimately, what will happen is that that will be superseded by another level of sophisticated viral activity. And so the process of us becoming self-aware just goes on and on. So first we become self-aware of the New World Order, and then we get self-aware of our own shadow stuff. And then we just keep going from there and just keep going from there. And so this is it's the ethic of human evolution, conscious human evolution.
Wow.
I really
Go ahead,
real
Leslie.
quick, I just wanted to say I really appreciate how you do bring up the idea of ethics and morality and how important that is to be immune, in a sense, to the evil, and that is an important
that's our
contemplation.
lifestyle. That's our behavior. Those are the decisions that we decide we will make or we won't make. These are the lines that we draw. And even if we don't have a Christian morality, we still have Christian morality. I think everybody will basically agree with the basic, tenets of Christian morality, the basic stuff, but we might be throwing away some of the fear-based stuff. You're going to go to hell and burn, fire and brimstone, and the little red man down there with horns that's going to get you and all that. We're going to throw that away, but we're going to replace some of that with our own ethics that is based on our desire to evolve ourselves and evolve the human race. And so that's what we're doing here, is we're developing a new ethical system for living a clean lifestyle. We're always going to have, or for a long time, we're going to have shadow material because we have the primal, the mammalian and the reptilian brain and body. And that's going to be presenting aggression and control drives and sexuality. It's going to be presenting that stuff to us. And it can't just be thrown out into the world. That's not a solution for the shadow, is just act on everything that comes out of you. So we have to learn ways of integrating or sublimating or displacing in healthy ways this material. And we just have to become aware of what we're doing and make that part of our ethical lifestyle. In the same way that somebody a pious Christian or Buddhist or Hindu would live a very austere and pious lifestyle for the betterment of themselves and mankind. So we have to do now.
Colin, I
Yep.
just wanted to bring up in terms of the wounded healer archetype, and now the culture of blaming the system and blaming the providers and blaming the doctors and everything. Sam Vaknin, I know you know who Sam Vaknin is he often talks about that true narcissists actually don't have a core self. So in terms of things like proselytizing self-awareness, I think again, the invitation for the self-work is where we all need to start. We can't change someone else, especially someone else who doesn't have a core self. So it's one of those things with that leadership, narcissistic, true psychopath mentality, and them not having a core sense of self. You can't direct that person or tell that person they need to do self-awareness because it's just not there.
You can't.
That's why the self-work, as you've said, always needs to be the initiating factor, and for us to show up differently, because some of these people that are our leaders this day and age, they've fallen too far that they're fully asleep. The grasp of self-awareness isn't even there. They've fallen. They're in a truly fallen state. So
right, they're
I just
just living. They're just, the cultural narrative is just like a script. It's going through. It's like a film strip going through a projector,
running,
and the projector's just running, and they're just saying, "Give me more script," and they're not analyzing whether or not that fits with themselves or not or whatever, and they're just running, and then they're getting high if they're getting some if their grandiose needs met through that, then they're like, "Oh, I'm getting high off of this," and so they just keep continuing to run the script.
Yeah.
And we can't change them. What we have to do is we have to first put it on ourselves, put ourselves under the microscope, and bring ourselves up to the highest level of this ethic. And then we have to find other people and do it with other people at the small level. That's what we're doing here, me and you and us here. And we're looking for other people who can do that and take this seriously, and then just share this language, talk about it, change it, make our own little, I don't want to say cult, but it's not a cult, because people who are individuating, becoming true individuals, can't be in cults.
Yeah.
You won't allow yourself to be. So we can't create a cult here, but we can create an ethical system in general of inner healing and self-awareness for our own benefit and for the benefit of humanity. And if we have to put a little bit of fantasy onto it, like, we're saving the world, let's just not think that we're saving the world in one lifetime, in 80 years or whatever. Let's extend it out to 1,000 years or something like that. Or the 7 generations model or whatever. Yeah.
It's the long run.
Yeah.
What an opportunity that we had post the COVID debacle.
Right.
For people to wake up and to take self-responsibility. What happened is many, many people woke up. I'm thinking of just the Maha movement alone.
Yeah.
Is we woke up to this, but we still were completely projecting. What if we took all of that energy that we woke up to and redirected it back to work upon ourselves? Like all of that opportunity that is still out, it's got directed out, and we could have really made a tremendous dent if we would have taken that energy and turned it back.
We weren't ready. I myself look at the red pill political stuff, and I was just been thinking. I was just like, God. So the Donald Trump thing. So whether you're pro or against Trump, it seems to me that the one good thing about him that we could, maybe all of us red pill people could agree on, is that he disrupted the system, right? He's like a trickster that disrupted the system or whatever. He put Bobby Kennedy in there and stuff like that. And that was like, that's good and everything. But the fact is that we're following it. We're like, oh, what's next? What's he doing now? And all of that. It's like, what's Daddy doing? What are these? What are my saviors? When are my saviors going to save me? And all of that. And we get so addicted to waiting for these people to save the country or to save humanity or whatever, when that's not the way it's going to work. Because if somebody were to fly in and be able to, I'm going to clean up the New World Order, I'm going to spray them and just spray all the Bill Gates and stuff, and then we would just be left with our own immature shadow projecting selves, and then we would just go, oh, you're the new enemy, and we would just start over the process again. And then some other savior would fly in and say, I need to save you. You guys are too immature. So it has to come back. You have to turn off all this collective shit and but it is important, but we can't just be alone. Just be like, okay, I'm just alone doing my own thing. Fuck the world. That doesn't work either. So we have to find communities of people who can handle this level of maturity.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Well put.
Sounds like we're at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I know we've gone over. You're welcome, Corey.
all good.
My pleasure.
It's all great.
I think you made fantastic points, and we're going to have discussions about
anytime.
Chat, among ourselves.
This was like a big data download or dump or whatever for people. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I like
I
what you
thought,
said about the cult, though. I think it's kind of like a culture that we're creating, not a
Culture.
cult, right? But yeah, every good, every bad can be used for some greater agenda. And I love how you're looking at all the nuance and you're looking at the bigger picture. And I
Yeah.
definitely think the four
Four quadrant
quadrants.
view. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
a
you so
really
much.
useful thing to just put that onto anything. Just go, once you just kind of read through the Ken Wilber stuff online and go, okay, kind of, it takes a while for this thing to kind of get into you. And then just take any subject that you're looking at, like permaculture. Okay, let's take permaculture, put it into the four quadrant. So what's the personal part of permaculture? And it's like, you have to look at the permaculture through the personal, subjective, psychological lens.
Right, right.
And what does it mean metaphorically and all of that? What does it mean at the body level, the health level, at the social level, at the cultural level? And you go, am I covering all these bases?
All right. And Scott, you
Yeah.
wanted to say something before we conclude? Or?
yeah, I thought maybe we could close by, I have Colin's book here,
Sure.
and his chapter 7, as he finishes the book with a declaration of psychosocial health.
That's
I thought
kind of
I'd
long,
read-
though. You want to read the whole thing?
Not the whole thing, but
Oh, yeah.
the opening paragraph and the
Right.
closing paragraph
Yeah.
are really powerful, and they point to, I think, the personal responsibility oriented solutions to ultimately that are going to, if anything's going to fix healthcare, it's going to come from this viewpoint. He says, in order to realize societal health, I take 100% responsibility for my personal health and inner state, which is a microcosm of the political state. If my inner state is violent, my political state is violent. My inner state is balanced, my world moves towards balance. Political evil emanates from the inner state of humanity. Therefore, I take responsibility for my own contribution to human destructiveness. And he goes on for a couple of pages
Yeah.
and elaborating on that. And in the end, we read, healthy leadership is only possible when leaders are psycho-spiritually mature. I mature myself so that I am a better leader, and I expect high-level maturity from those who ask to perform leadership roles for my benefit. So I really encourage people to get and
Yeah.
read this book. It kind of summarizes our discussion here and points towards solutions. And I thank you so much for sharing what I
My
consider
pleasure.
pioneering and valuable information.
Thank you, Scott. And we have to give Melissa Mari credit. And viewers may not know about her. She was my partner for 12 years, and all of this came through Melissa. She's the mother of this work. And so I was interested in evil and I was doing shadow work before Melissa, but all this stuff came through thousands of hours of us working all this material out. And so it wouldn't be here without her. And I'm actually making a movie. I'm almost done with the movie about her now. And I'm going to put it in, try to get it in some film festivals. And so I don't think I'm just going to put it out on the internet quite yet, but there'll be a trailer out and some supporting interviews and stuff like that. So people get to know Melissa, because she was such. She to me is the exemplar, the example of someone who says everything that happens to me in my life that's negative is created through a part of me. And I have to take responsibility for that. I have to go find that part of me and heal that part of me. And that's how I make my life more balanced, and there was nothing that was too heavy for her. She was like, once she got to a wall with something, she's like, okay, I got a wall. It's like, gotta get under that wall, get over that wall, just next. And so she just had the most stoic and courageous attitude about working on herself. And so I just use her as the example. If she could do it, and like I was saying earlier, she couldn't get through the cancer virus code that was in her family that killed her father at a young age, and and all of that. That was her fate, but her destiny was all of the amazing art and philosophy and psychospirituality that she developed in her lifetime. And now it's like, and now she got with me, And she chose the right person to keep going with this, because I'm not like her other boyfriends who'll be like, oh, I just had a relationship with this amazing chick. Oh, well, move on. No way, I'm not doing that. I'm saying this was an amazing thing that happened, and I'm going to take this and carry it forward.
Wow.
That's
That's
beautiful.
awesome.
Colin, appreciate you so much and what you've shared
Oh,
with us
yes.
today.
Thank you, Leslie. I
Thank you.
appreciate you and everybody on this call. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Colin.
Shadow-
I really appreciate it. Yes, the website.
ShadowTechAlchemy.com.
Yeah, shadowtechalchemy.com. Make sure you go there.
Thanks,
Yes.
you guys.
And finally, healthrevealed.org. We're going to have a lot more interviews to come with a lot of great guests and different topics, a lot more information that maybe you've never learned about, and exploring deeper the quadrants that we talked about. You might even see that some of the information from the quadrants you can also find on our main seminar. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Check it out, healthrevealed.org and shadowtechalchemy.com. Take care.